In the previous class, we reflected on numerical comparisons among beings of the 6 realms, and we understood the rarity of human life. Now let's continue with this. The attainment of these freedoms and advantages is not random or accidental. It is the result of the accumulated merit and wisdom over many kalpas, as said in a guide to the words of my perfect teacher. To obtain the freedoms, we need to observe pure discipline. To obtain the advantages, we need to gather a mighty store of merit through the practice of generosity and so on. Furthermore, in order to obtain the freedoms and advantages, these primary causes have to be linked by pure aspiration, which is a contributory cause. It is said in the sutras that there are 4 kinds of rarity: the rarity of obtaining a human life, the rarity of encountering the Dharma, the rarity of generating faith in the Dharma, and the rarity of generating bodhicitta. Now we have all 4 kinds of rarity, the result of an accumulation of merit and wisdom built up over many kalpas, so we have such a supreme opportunity in this life. Many people, upon amassing great wealth, think they are tremendously fortunate. In fact, having a human life is far more fortunate than having wealth. The wealth, however abundant it is, can only bring us temporary benefits for this life, whereas our human life can enable us to obtain the ultimate benefit of liberation from samsara. Therefore, we should carefully reflect on this, which in itself is the practice of the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages. The so-called practice doesn't necessarily mean we meditate with eyes closed until certain states arise or the bindu, essence drop, appears. If we contemplate this over and over again, in the end the conviction that the human life for the Dharma is very rare and precious will arise naturally. Such a conviction is neither a pretense nor a fabrication. It arises naturally from our mind, and we feel so fortunate to have such a precious human life. This means we have realized the rarity of human life. Such a practice is not hard at all, so everybody can do it. Some Dharma students complain, "I got up early in the morning, trying to meditate, but was not able to do it well. Maybe it's because my karmic debt is too heavy. It's just so hard for me to meditate. So I have no choice but falling asleep again." In fact, no matter how dim-witted you are and how rampant your discursive thoughts are, you can still read the texts related to your meditation practice over and over again and reflect on the content over and over again. Then, you will be able to grasp its meaning and start to feel it in your meditation. The great learned master Trokpa Gyaltsen said, "This human life with freedoms and advantages is not the outcome of your own resourcefulness, but the result of the merit you have accumulated. The fact that we have the human form with 8 freedoms and 10 advantages is not the result of our power, social status, wealth, or fame. Some worldly officials may have obtained their positions with money or connections, but there is no way for them to obtain a human form with the same means. The only reason we have this human form is because we have engaged in wholesome deeds and accumulated merit over many kalpas. To the monks and nuns present today, please do not think your ordination just came by chance or coincidence, that you happen to generate renunciation from family life. In fact, it involved many intriguing causes and conditions relevant to you. Many people like to say, whatever happens is predestined, or we cannot change our destiny. Actually, if they know the explanations in the treasury of Abhidharma and in Buddhist logic, they will have to accept the law of cause and effect. When they finally understand the profound relationship between causes and effects, they will realize everything is the result of previous actions, and whatever happens now has its antecedent causes. Those wise individuals who have such an understanding will definitely ponder issues related to their liberation from the cyclic rebirths in samsara. By doing so, they will appreciate their precious human life and won't fritter away their time on nothing. However, for those who don't have the least notion of Dharma, being born as a human only to engage in wrongdoing, such as killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying, is considered even worse than being born in the lowest of the low realms. Why? Because the negative actions conducted by animals are quite limited due to their lack of intelligence, whereas those conducted by human beings can be fatal, given their expertise and competence in certain fields. For example, a person can build all kinds of weapons, such as nuclear weapons or atomic bombs, which can destroy all lives on Earth in a second. Some individuals are unable to conduct such large-scale wrongdoings, yet they have formed very bad habits since childhood. For example, they slaughter chickens or fish every day or devour many lives to nourish their own body. In comparison, although animals are in a lower realm, they won't commit so many acts of atrocity. For example, yaks and goats spend their whole lives eating grass and drinking water and live a pure life. Some people live terrible lives. They're so adept at committing wrongdoings but so incompetent at doing anything good. They don't believe in the 3 jewels and have never made one prostration, offered one butter lamp, or burned one piece of incense in their whole lives. It is very likely that we have such individuals around us. They can be found everywhere, so we don't necessarily have to meditate hard, trying to figure out what such a person is like. Given what they do, we can tell their human life is worthless. As Jetsun Milarepa said to the hunter Gonpo Dorje, to have the freedoms and fortunes of human birth is usually said to be precious. But when I see someone like you, it doesn't seem precious at all. The 100,000 Songs of Milarepa has this story about how the hunter Gonpo Dorje met Milarepa. When Milarepa was in retreat in a secluded cave at Mountain Nishangurda, on the border between Nepal and Tibet, one day he heard a dog barking, followed by a gunshot. Soon a black deer came near Milarepa, covered in sweat and trembling with fear. Upon seeing the frightened deer, Milarepa generated great compassion and calmed the deer by singing a Vajra song, or a song of realization. The deer relaxed and lay down on its left side. Soon afterward, a hunting dog with red fur appeared, barking aggressively. Milarepa also generated great sorrow and compassion toward the dog, and he pacified the dog's anger by singing another Vajra song. The dog wagged its tail in a friendly way and lay down on its right side. Milarepa thought, a depraved person must be after these 2 animals. I'm afraid this person is coming soon. Shortly, a fierce hunter with angry eyes appeared, running toward Milarepa with his gun, bow, and arrows on his back. When the hunter saw his dog and the black deer peacefully lying down beside Milarepa, like a mother and her child, he thought, this yogi must have cast some spell on my dog and the deer. Therefore, he flew into a rage and shot an arrow at Milarepa. Being an expert archer, he was shocked that he missed. At that time, Milarepa sang a Vajra song to the hunter, which included this verse. To have the freedoms and fortunes of human birth is usually said to be precious. But when I see someone like you, it doesn't seem precious at all. Indeed, hunters, fishermen, and butchers spend their whole lives committing vices, so they are really pitiful. Upon hearing this Vajra song, the hunter felt the yogi was miraculous and perhaps an extraordinary enlightened being. Then he entered Milarepa's cave and found no provisions or possessions, but only some nettle and grass roots as his food. The hunter couldn't help but generate incredible faith in Milarepa. He offered his bow, arrows, and captured animals to Milarepa, requesting to be his disciple and vowing to never again commit wrongdoings. Initially, the hunter planned to return home and explain his plans to his family, and then come back, and follow Milarepa. However, Milarepa disagreed, asking him to immediately cut off his attachment to his family and follow him into a life of practice right away. Later, the hunter Gongpo Dorje became a great enlightened master. The dog and the black deer were also freed from the sufferings of the lower realms. There are many wonderful stories about Milarepa's life. Those who have not read the biography should do so. In the history of Tibetan Buddhism, Milarepa is considered a great practitioner. His songs of enlightenment and Vajra words have had a profound influence on later generations, myself included. I have great confidence in his biography. I remember more than 20 years ago, when I was still in junior high school, once I was home on sick leave, and a lama from my village read us the biography of Milarepa every night. In about 2 weeks, I heard the entire biography from this lama. My memory was very good back then, so I could retell many stories I heard. One summer, after I was back at school from sick leave, I went with my classmate Soritsi to the Zongta grassland, where flowers were blooming everywhere. So beautiful. We first washed our feet by the river and then sat on the grass. I told him stories from the biography of Milarepa for the whole afternoon. As he listened, his tears were falling down. Later, he failed to enter the normal school due to poor grades, but he still remembered those stories. Last year when we met, he said, "When we were in junior high school, you already gave me teachings, and I still remember them vividly. At that time, I started to generate great faith in the Dharma." Sometimes, one short story can indeed change a person's life. I've interviewed many Buddhists with higher worldly educations, and some said that after reading Milarepa's stories and his songs of enlightenment, they had a new perspective about life that eventually brought them to the monastic path. There are many such cases. Now let's get back to the teaching. When we have time and opportunity, we should meditate on the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages more often. Many people either lack mental strength or have no opportunity to practice, so few of them really know the rarity and difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages. If you look around, not many people in the whole world are living a precious human life. Of course, they will be upset when hearing us speak like this, but still, their human life doesn't seem precious at all. The world population is rapidly growing. In just over 50 years, its number has increased from 2.5 billion in 1950 to 6.3 billion in the year 2000. It is expected that in a few decades, the population will reach 10 billion. Given the limited space and resources on Earth, this rapid growth will bring a series of environmental, social, and economic problems, as well as an energy crisis. These problems and crises arise from the fact that more and more people are doing less good, committing wrongdoings, and rejecting the law of karma. Unfortunately, the opposite isn't happening. People aren't doing more virtuous acts, thus they are unable to bring a brighter future to the world. Given all the existing problems, mankind will have to face even more problems and hardships in the future. We Buddhists have to reflect on what has happened. Compared with our ancestors, modern-day people are more interested in wrongdoings and are also more capable of committing vicious actions. Today's ethics, morality, and cultural education are also getting weaker. The world seems to be moving forward with astonishing developments in science and technology, of which many people are proud. However, people's morality has been constantly deteriorating, so human beings are bound to become more deluded and perilous. Therefore, we should reflect more on the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages and refrain from indulging ourselves in immediate gratifications as worldly people do. Of course, we are not pessimists who cannot discern pleasure from sorrow, who blindly believe life is full of suffering. After all, wisdom in Buddhism is more insightful than any worldly knowledge. If indulgence was indeed a worthy action, it would be advocated in Buddhism. Yet the Buddha never advocated indulgence, and you can figure out why. Regarding the capability for committing wrongdoings, humans far surpass all other sentient beings. Thus, nothing has as much power to drag us down to the lower realm as human life. Some people, due to the vicious deeds they have been committing throughout their lives, condemn themselves to countless kalpas of suffering in the hell realm with no chance of regaining the human form. For example, a national leader who started a war or destroyed Buddhism will undoubtedly face a dire consequence. There were several persecutions of Buddhism in the history of China, the largest of which were the three disasters of Wu and the disaster of Emperor Shizong. The first disaster of Wu was carried out by Emperor Taiwu of Northern Wei, who was an ill-tempered and cruel ruler. He ordered Buddhism to be abolished 3 times and destroyed Buddha statues, images, and scriptures across the country. Meanwhile, he slaughtered monastics, both young and old, without any mercy. Once a monastic at large was captured, he would be decapitated or slaughtered in public. As a result, not a single monk or nun could be seen within Emperor Taiwu's territory. The second disaster of Wu was carried out by Emperor Wu of the Northern Zhou dynasty, who destroyed temples and stupas, burned Buddhist scriptures and images, and forced monastics to disrobe. Later, Emperor Wu invaded and took over the territory of Northern Qi and implemented the abolition of Buddhism there as well. He again destroyed all the Buddha images and scriptures, demolished over 40,000 temples, confiscated their land, and gave it to his ministers. More than 3 million monks and nuns were forced to return to lay life. Buddhism was completely wiped out at that time. The third disaster of Wu was carried out by Emperor Wuzong of the Tang dynasty, who ordered the burning of all Buddhist scriptures in the palace, the burying of all Buddha statues, and also banned all teaching in the temples. He banned more than 4,600 large or medium-sized temples and more than 40,000 small temples. More than 260,000 monks and nuns were forced to return to civilian life. The fourth persecution was carried out by Emperor Shizong of the later Zhou dynasty, who didn't execute monastics or destroy Buddhist scriptures on a large scale, but still banned more than 30,000 temples and forced tens of thousands of monks and nuns to disrobe. He ordered Buddha statues destroyed so the copper could be used to mint coins to fill up the national treasury. These emperors' persecutions of Buddhism were very similar to those of King Dharma of Tibet, a 9th century Tibetan ruler who also persecuted Buddhism. The vicious deeds each of them committed in a lifetime are so terrible. Take Emperor Wuzong, for example. Among 21 emperors of the Tang dynasty, he is the only one who suppressed Buddhism. He was on the throne for only 6 years, but nevertheless he managed to demolish Buddhism during his reign. If science and technology had been very well developed, he could have brought persecution of Buddhism to the whole world. Some historical accounts contend the 3 disasters of Wu were related to Taoism, and the disaster of Emperor Shizong related to Confucianism. But some historians have said the fundamental reason for the 4 anti-Buddhism persecutions was related to the national economy. Before each persecution, large-scale expenditures on Buddhism during the previous reigns had exhausted the national treasury. In addition, during periods of foreign invasions, monks and nuns could legitimately escape military service and could also escape paying taxes, which brought a lot of pressure on society. Monastics were supposed to conduct ascetic practices, but many of them amassed significant wealth in the temples and acquired extensive land holdings. This situation put great financial pressure on the state. In addition, the emperors considered Buddhism a foreign religion, conflicting with local Chinese religions. The above reasons prompted the emperors to persecute Buddhism. Chanlu Zongzi, a Chinese Chan Buddhist monk of the Song dynasty, reviewed the situations and commented, "The three disasters of Wu befell our religion. Followers as Buddha Shakyamuni departed, leaving temples and stupas deserted. This occurred because in the past, when Buddhism was revered, monastics failed to uphold the true essence of purity and simplicity. Therefore, the anti-Buddhism persecutions were connected to the fact that many monastics did not lead a simple life and fully dedicate themselves to spiritual practices in line with the pure teachings of Buddhism. This failure to uphold the true principles in Buddhism ultimately set the stage for future calamities." Practitioners of later generations have to reflect on Chanlu Zongzi's words. Today, many monastics and practitioners are living a simple life with few desires, and they truly study and practice the Dharma, which is worthy of praise. However, some monastics merely idle their time away without doing anything meaningful. They bring no contribution to Buddhism and society at large, and instead cause people's misunderstandings about Buddhism. As a Buddhist, if you conduct virtuous deeds, you will bring great benefits to society and the nation. Even if you are not capable of doing something significant, as long as you make aspirations with pure intention, there is no doubt you will bring peace and happiness to beings. On the contrary, if Buddhists are greedy for money, hardly uphold pure precepts, and don't act according to the Dharma, the increasing number of such Buddhists will become a burden to society. Therefore, when we study the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages, we should also review relevant historical events and compare current situations with those that caused the anti-Buddhism persecutions. We just learned that if an individual has committed a severe wrongdoing, they cannot be freed from the lower realms for many kalpas. Therefore, when we have a human form, it's totally up to us what we do with that form, doing good or doing bad. Some people complain, "I can't study Buddhism because I am controlled by my family, my work, and my karma." In fact, compared to beings of other realms, you still have freedom. Imagine if you were an animal. You wouldn't have any possibility to practice the Dharma. Now that you have this precious human life, you can always find a solution to alleviate the pressures from society and family on your Dharma studies. The key is whether you have enough mental strength to do so. Recently, I read an article entitled "Holding the Key to Your Happiness," which stated that a mature person has the ability to grasp the key to their own happiness. They don't need to rely on others to make them happy. Instead, they can bring happiness to others. Similarly, the key to our future happiness is also in our own hands if we choose virtues over vices. If a person firmly believes in the law of karma, they won't allow themselves to willingly plunge into the abyss of suffering by committing vicious deeds. However, due to influences from the external environment and their own karma, some people are dubious about the existence of a lower realm and its suffering. As a result, they may engage in certain actions that deviate from the right path. As the verse says, "Used well, this body is our raft to freedom. Used badly, this body anchors us to samsara." This body does the bidding of both good and evil. If we use this human body to offer lamps, prostrate, and engage in other good deeds, then it is our raft to freedom. Our body can then take us across the ocean of cyclic birth and death, full of suffering, to the other shore of liberation and nirvana. However, if we use this human body to conduct vicious deeds such as killing, then it anchors us to samsara and imprisons us in the lower realms with no hope of liberation. Therefore, this human body is like a servant who can either clean up the house or mess up everything. Thus, we have to weigh the pros and cons of this human life. Each one of us has a body, and all our actions are carried out through it. Therefore, our mind, the master of the body, must always check and guide what the body is doing with mindfulness and vigilance. It is thanks to the power of all the merit we have accumulated in the past that we have now attained this precious human life, complete with all the freedoms and advantages. Therefore, we must use this human life to pursue the essence of the supreme Dharma. The way of the Bodhisattva says, and yet it may indeed be kept as food to feed the vulture and the fox. The value of this human form lies only in the use you make of it. Apart from performing virtuous deeds, we must prevent the body from doing things mindlessly or even engaging in negative actions. Although the body can be like an enemy that carries out actions leading to all our sufferings, we still need to protect it well, because if through the body we uphold precepts and live long, it can generate great merit. As said in Aryadeva's 400 stanzas on the middle way, although the body is seen like a foe, nevertheless it should be protected. By long sustaining a disciplined body, great merit is created. Therefore, those who study and practice the authentic Dharma can bring great benefit, even if they just stay in this world for one day. Those who always commit vicious deeds might be better off leaving the world a bit earlier. And even if they're reborn as animals, this is better than becoming a human, because at least animals can't commit wrongdoings as much as humans can. Many people indulge daily in eating, drinking, and partying, relentlessly pursuing wealth. In succumbing to the 8 worldly concerns, they squander their precious human lives meaninglessly. If we as practitioners do the same, failing to practice the Dharma throughout our lives, then at the time of death, we will only clutch our chests in deep regret. It will be truly heart-wrenching and lamentable. Some people are unaware of the existence of rebirth. When they die, they are no different from unintelligent yaks. They have neither regret for their past wrongdoings nor caution about the horrors of rebirth. In fact, sometimes it seems that human beings are not as smart as we think. Some scientists and writers consider themselves smart, but they don't even know whether rebirth exists or not, and remain indifferent to future lives. As it says in the way of the Bodhisattva, thus, having found this moment of reprieve, if I now fail to train myself in virtue, what greater folly could there ever be? How more could I betray myself? Now that we have obtained the precious human life, if we fail to engage in virtuous deeds, nothing could be more ignorant than this. It's understandable if others betray us, but isn't it too much if we betray ourselves? Unfortunately, many people are influenced by karma from past lives and conditioned by education in this life, so they become incredibly ignorant. Alas, what a pity. Now that you have obtained a precious human life capable of studying and practicing the Dharma, you should really rejoice. In finding rest in the nature of mind, Longchen Pa says one should reflect on the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages with joy. To be honest, do you have this feeling? In the vast sea of people, thousands of them don't know the existence of rebirth. I am aware of its existence and have prepared for future lives. How fortunate! Although I may not have practiced the Dharma well, I do feel horrified about committing wrongdoings myself and become wretched when seeing others engage in negative actions. If you have such feelings, you will appreciate this human life and use it to cross the sea of life and death, full of suffering. As you should know, it is this present life that is the turning point at which you can choose between lasting good or lasting evil. This choice is similar to the way a child's school years are crucial for them in finding a good job in the future. The same rationale also applies to your present practice. your present life, which lasts a few decades, is crucial for you because it determines whether your future lives are filled with lasting happiness or lasting suffering. Therefore, every person should carefully contemplate this. If in this lifetime you do not make use of this human form to attain enlightenment, it will be very difficult to obtain such a human life again. Once reborn into a lower realm, there will be no light of the true Dharma, and you will be clueless about what to do and what not to do. As a result, it will be extremely hard to escape from the lower realms, and you will fall endlessly further and further into even lower realms. Therefore, from now on, you must make every effort to practice the Dharma. During such contemplation, you should apply the three supreme methods. Start with generating bodhicitta, then practice without any conceptualization, and dedicate the merit at the end. Specifically, at the beginning of a session, you should generate bodhicitta by vowing to benefit all sentient beings. When you start meditation, you don't necessarily have to close your eyes. You can read and reflect on the text over and over again, and gradually conviction will naturally arise. When listening to the teaching, some practitioners may feel that a human life is really hard to obtain, but such a feeling can disappear as fast as lightning in the dark night. Khenpo Newam Pelzang offers this analogy. You will be like a piece of red-hot iron that becomes black again as soon as it is removed from the forge. These practitioners might be like this. When they are in a meditation session, they become so absorbed that tears stream down their cheeks. But when they are out of the session, they barely feel anything anymore. This is because they don't have a long-term sustained practice. If they can persist in the practice and always contemplate the content, they will truly recognize the rarity of human life. As a result, they will regard everything other than studying and practicing the Dharma as unreliable, including fame, social status, and possessions. As some eminent masters said, if we are betrayed by a close friend we deeply trust, we will feel immense despair and harbor strong aversion towards the friend. If we have the same level of despair and aversion towards everything in samsara, it means we've cultivated genuine renunciation. Of the four thoughts, the four contemplations that turn the mind away from samsara, the first is the thought of the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages. If conviction about this thought arises in you, you will generate long-lasting renunciation, which means that except for the pursuit of liberation, you will have no interest in anything else. As Milarepa says, in a rocky cave in a deserted land, my sorrow is unrelenting. Constantly I yearn for you, my teacher, Buddha of the three times. Personally, I like this verse very much. Retreating in his secluded cave, Milarepa retained no interest in anything in samsara at all times, instead of just a few days. It's just like how a person feels when they break up with their romantic partner. The whole world loses meaning for them. We should be like Milarepa, who always remained in a similar state of disgust and aversion towards samsara. Meanwhile, Milarepa firmly believed that his guru was inseparable from all the Buddhas of the three times. It shouldn't be the case that we are happy seeing the guru today and then abandon and even slander the guru a few days later. A practitioner's fervent faith in the guru should never regress. True renunciation and uncontrived faith in the guru are the two most crucial points in one's practice. We should contemplate and meditate on the rarity of human life over and over again and put the teachings into practice. As a measure of how much this practice has truly convinced us, just like Geshe Chengawa, he devoted all his time to practicing and never even slept. Geshe Tonpa was worried about his health and advised him, "You'd better rest, my son. You will make yourself ill." "Yes, I should rest," Chengawa replied, "but when I reflect on how difficult it is to attain the freedoms and advantages that we have, I don't feel like resting." He recited the mantras of Myowa 900 million times and went without sleep throughout his entire life. This level of dedication to practice is extraordinary. It might be very hard for us to emulate Geshe Chingawa and never sleep, not even for 1 hour a day. Patrul Rinpoche might have set standards for different levels, the highest of which is the state achieved by Geshe Chingawa. If we really cannot reach a similar state, at least we should practice diligently and avoid being lazy. It is truly incredible if a person can recite 900 million mantras throughout their life. The great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche mentioned that he also recited 900 million repetitions of mantras of various deities. Some mantras with only 1 syllable, and some with 12 syllables. Even though the mantra consists of only 1 syllable, it is not easy to recite it 100 million times as we have vowed to do. In the past, when we vowed to recite the syllable "ah," I was not able to complete my recitation. Recently, I managed to recite a specific mantra 100,000 times a day, and it hasn't been very easy to do. I have to deal with many things in a day, so I have to get up earlier and go to bed later in order to have some time for my own practice. Otherwise, a person like me who is very occupied will find it really hard to practice the Dharma. If you want to practice well, you must not get lazy. Otherwise, if you sleep too much, a few hours will slip away unnoticed. The way of the Bodhisattva says, so take advantage of this human boat. Free yourself from sorrow's mighty stream. This vessel will be later hard to find. The time that you have now, you fool, is not for sleep. Sakyapantita also says, our lifespan is cut in half, as sleep at night is equivalent to death. Our life is already so short, so if we spend half our life sleeping, it is truly a great pity. It is very hard for us to emulate Geshe Chingawa and never sleep at night, but even if we are not able to do the same, we should at least develop conviction about the rarity of human life. If such a conviction arises strongly in your mind, you won't sleep in. It's as if you have a big trip tomorrow morning, say to Beijing, Hong Kong, or somewhere in America. I bet it will be hard for you to fall into a deep sleep. If you don't have conviction, you will sleep soundly. The worse your practice on the rarity of human life is, the longer your sleep will be. The reason many practitioners sleep excessively is that their practice is poor. They must find a way to solve this issue. Of course, not sleeping at all is impossible for most of us. The great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche suggested that we rest well when it's time to rest. I was still young back then, so I didn't understand Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's words very well, thinking, the time at night is so precious, so it's better to sleep only a little bit. Why does my guru say this to us? But when I reached a certain age, I started to understand Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's intention and care. Indeed, when it's time to sleep, one should sleep. Otherwise, it's not good. Nevertheless, we must not act like worldly people who live an idle life and conduct no virtuous deeds at all. We should find a good balance here and not go to extremes. Therefore, before we develop conviction about the rarity of human life, we must practice diligently. Here is the summary verse of this chapter. Although I have won these freedoms, I am poor in Dharma, which is their essence. Although I have entered the Dharma, I waste time doing other things. Bless me and foolish beings like me, that we may attain the very essence of the freedoms and advantages. Modestly, Patrul Rinpoche stated, even though I have been fortunate enough to possess the precious human life with all its freedoms and advantages, I am not excelling in my practice. Despite having entered the Dharma long ago, I am still squandering my time on unwholesome actions driven by greed, anger, and ignorance. I beseech all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, lineage gurus, and Dharma protectors to bestow their blessings upon me and all foolish beings like me, that we may attain the very core of these freedoms and advantages. Please remember that praying is of great importance. A guide to the words of my perfect teacher specifically addresses the prayers and aspirations related to the practices concerning the four thoughts. Simply reflecting on the text briefly, without earnest prayer, is not sufficient. When you do the practice, make sure you recite while putting palms together and pray with your eyes closed. Through the blessings of the Guru, the Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas, may I generate conviction about the rarity of the precious human life. You should have strong desire for this, as well as uncontrived faith in the Guru, and then you can begin the meditation in this state. By doing so, your practice is bound to succeed. Otherwise, if you just go through the content in your mind carelessly while meditating, you won't reach any state of practice. I hope everyone can develop conviction about the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages, which is more important than anything else. With this as the foundation, you won't have any difficulty in doing subsequent practices. On the other hand, if you fail to establish a solid foundation, however splendid the building above the ground is, at a certain point it will collapse. Therefore, it is very important for each and every practitioner to lay a solid foundation for the Dharma practice. This concludes Chapter 1, The Difficulty of Finding the Freedoms and Advantages.